Okay, everyone, we're going to start the next session now, so welcome back. Our next session turns to local energy and community ownership. The recently announced local power plan creates a significant opportunity for communities to own and shape their own energy assets. And many of us know for co-ops this is a natural space: democratic ownership, local benefit, long-term resilience and practical climate action. So I'd like to hand over to Maeve Campbell, independent climate journalist, who will introduce the panel. Maeve, over to you.
Hello everyone, lovely to meet you. My name is Maeve. I am a climate journalist, as previously said. I'm independent. I work mainly for Channel 4 News during the week, and then I write for various papers as well. But I'm really pleased to be here today, specifically for this energy and power session, because I think that it's one of the most interesting kind of intersections that we're at right now, especially in the co-op movement, which I'm personally very passionate about. Obviously, we all know that we're living through a massive political shift in terms of how the UK thinks about power, both electrical and political. The government's local power plan, if you don't know already, has put a staggering £1 billion on the table, with the aim that by 2030, every single community in the UK or in the country, in England, should have the right to own its own clean energy assets. So if you're a community energy group, this will probably sound like kind of the promised land to you, because this is exactly what your USP is. But if you're one of the 6,000 non-energy co-ops across the UK, whether it's like a high street retail society, or you're a housing block, or you're a Whole Foods cooperative, you might be wondering kind of what does £1 billion have to do with us, which is what we're going to be talking about today. As you know, co-ops have an 82% 5-year survival rate, double the UK business average. So you guys survive where traditional businesses fail. And I think that's why it's so impressive overall. So today we're going to be talking about how we bridge the gap. And we're going to start with the national vision from Great British Energy, and then look at how, on a panel, we can scale this fairly across the country, especially in more deprived communities. And we'll learn from co-ops who are already doing it, and they're doing it well. So we're going to dive in first with our keynote, and then I'm going to have a panel with a group of experts. So I'd like to introduce to the stage our panel first. So please welcome, we have Nadia Smith, who's the Director of Community Energy London. Dr. Matthew Vickers, who's CEO of Community Energy England. Vicky Dunn, who's the founding member of Grimsby Community Energy. Fraser Stewart, who's head of local energy strategy at Great British Energy. This is a big panel. We've got Gareth Dowling. Gareth is the local government officer for the Co-operative Party. And last but not least, we have Scott Irwin, who is the member director at Green City Whole Foods. Thank you. So I've introduced you guys up now, but now you guys sit tight, and I'm going to introduce Fraser, if you can come up and give us your keynote. Thank you.
Happy days. Morning, everyone. Nice to see you, and thanks for having me this morning on a relatively sunny Birmingham day. I'm Fraser. I am the head of local energy strategy at GB Energy. So we've had some of the context set out helpfully by Maeve already. That we've had in February, the local power plan jointly published by GB Energy and the UK government, setting out the biggest investment, certainly from a government body in the UK, in history into local and community-owned energy, up to £1 billion to spend over the next 3.5 years. That translates, or the big ambition and target is to deliver 1,000 local and community-owned energy projects within that time, so that realistically every community across the country can own and benefit from these systems. When I come out and I do these presentations, which are always in Birmingham somehow, when I come out and do these presentations and speak with the sector, I get asked two main questions, inevitably every single time. The first of these questions is, where the fuck's the money? And the answer is, we're very much working on it. And over the next few months, towards the end of the summer, we'll have an awful lot more to announce and launch out to support the sector to start scaling up to those 1,000 projects. But the second question is then, what is GBE local? What are you set up to do? What are your priorities, and what is it that you're trying to achieve? So it's the second question that I'm going to focus on just for the next 5 or 6 minutes or so to try and clarify some of the priorities that we have and what we're working on. But rather than just hit you with information, I had this session framed to me as a keynote. So I want to hit you with a little bit of a provocation as well, especially those doing energy work among you. And that provocation is that GB Energy will not save us all. I'm going to come back to that in a few slides' time. So, what are we? What are we set up to do? What are we trying to achieve? Well, it was set out in the local power plan, but we've put an awful lot more of the detail behind that now. So the ambition for GB Energy is to make it so that by 2030, all communities have the opportunity, the realistic opportunity, to own and benefit from local energy systems. Here we're talking about those local systems, local solar farms, rooftop solar projects, community-owned wind, those types of projects, that every community in the UK realistically has the opportunity to own and benefit from those. So the big target is 1,000 projects. We've also got a big aim around reducing bills, particularly for community centres, for frontline services, for public services overall, but households at the end of that as well, who have faced the sharpest impacts of the energy crisis and volatile prices. We want to crowd in more capital into the sector, and now I don't mean big scary capital, I mean working through share offers, I mean working with social impact investors and pension funds to be that catalyst. That means we're not just talking about 1,000 projects and then Treasury shuts up shop for us. We're talking about the first 1,000 and the next 1,000 and the next 1,000 after that. That shakes out, this is the boring bit, that shakes out at about 4 main roles that GB Energy in the local space intends to come in and play. The first of these is deploying investment, as we've already said, right? That's providing the grant funding, affordable and accessible finance, so where commercial lenders, where high street might be reticent because they think communities and councils are a bit risky as propositions, we want to step into that space. But also deploying equity, investing alongside community energy groups, alongside cooperatives, alongside other organisations to make projects happen in practice. There's then building capacity, because anyone who's ever tried to touch an energy project in this room will know that even for a relatively small and seemingly straightforward project, it's complicated and it takes time and it takes resource, especially when we get to those communities in areas of high deprivation who haven't benefited from this so far. It's not as easy as just, here's a bunch of money, go and do a project. So we want to put in place that infrastructure of capacity and capability support, linking up with existing providers and organisations. I'm looking at Energy for All, I'm looking at Co-ops UK, who provide an awful lot of that support in the round already, to make it so that developing projects is easy, is accessible, and that the support and the expertise that you need are available consistently right across the UK. We then have the most boring piece of all of this, which is standardising delivery, because doing bespoke one-off projects, individual council rooftops or individual community solar farms, while impactful and while all projects are important, it means having to repeat the process, it means having to spend lots of money on the consultancy advice that you need and all the extra bits and pieces that don't really scale with the scale of a project. So big developers pay these costs, small communities pay these costs. So we want to standardise as much of that as possible so that these are repeatable, linked into that capacity and capability support. The final is then recognising value, and for me, and this is a personal hat, as well as an organisational hat, is that we know that community-owned energy and locally owned energy, and I would say community-owned first in this case, carries enormous social and economic value to the places that build those projects, right? All of the profits, and we see the seeds of resentment already sown, and I don't think unfairly, about a transition that is playing out on the doorsteps of communities who can't afford to pay their energy bills. The value of community ownership of these assets is that you decide what then happens with the profits. It's democratic ownership to decide the direction of the next stage and the next stage after that. But it's also when you reduce bills for public services, for community hubs, for households directly, you improve health and all that good stuff that goes with it. That stuff doesn't fit on your typical commercial investment case. I would argue it doesn't fit particularly well in the Treasury Green Book analysis or whoever you need to justify money to, but it absolutely fits on ours. And this is a key part of the point, is we're not thinking about this as just a nice to have. We'll do 1,000 local and community energy projects because they're They look nice because our boss gets a chance to go out onto a school somewhere with a fucking hard hat on and sing about how impactful this project is. It's about power, as Maeve outlined, I thought very helpfully. It's about power in more ways than one, about economic power as well as the energy side of it. It's thin end of the wedge against 15 plus years of public services being hollowed out, of community wealth being hollowed out while profits elsewhere continue to soar. Don't tell my boss I said the last bit. So that brings us to, I guess, four principles that guide the decision-making and the investments we intend to make. And like I say, end of this summer, you will have a significant amount more detail with the first investments already in train and the first programs already in design and very almost ready to go. But there are 4 principles that guide the work that we do. The first of these is scale and pace, right? 1,000 projects by 2030, that's 3.5 years. That is not an awful lot of time. So everything that we do has to be in service of scaling up as quickly as we can. And that gets power into the hands of communities and councils quicker as well. So that includes the point around standardisation that we talked about. It includes working with the existing sector, partnering with the existing sector, because we're not here to cannibalise. We're not here to send out GBE vans and do all the work on everyone's behalf. There's a thriving ecosystem, whether that's of cooperatives, community energy organisations, the intermediaries, like your Energy for Alls, like your Co-ops UK, and plenty others besides, some of whom are in the room as well. We want to work with them to help enable the work that they do, so that as far as possible, the benefit and the value all flows back directly into local places. The next is fairness. This is the just transition principle. So a big steer of the conversation today, I'm extremely glad to see it will focus on how do we do this stuff in areas that don't already have it, especially those places, areas of higher deprivation, less affluent, working class, marginalised communities. This is a big founding principle of what we're trying to achieve with the local power plan at GB Energy. And there are a few ways that we intend to achieve that. So with our capacity and capability support, that will be prioritised and targeted at areas that don't currently have local and community energy, especially those that are in high deprivation by various metrics. But we're also building just transition into our investment decision making. So when we put out the local power plan, we got lots of expressions of interest. Most of them, if you're in the room and you have one, most of them should have been responded to by now. If not, they will be in the next couple of weeks. But we got about 800 expressions of interest. How do you prioritise projects to legitimately say, right, this is why we've opted for this one? The just transition is a crucial mechanism within that prioritisation exercise to us. So here I'm talking about projects that are located first in those types of communities, projects which build wealth in those types of communities, so profits going back with a clear plan for reinvestment locally. But we're also talking about projects that help then tackle fuel poverty and help decarbonise homes and bring down bills for people who ultimately need it. That doesn't mean that we don't invest in the other projects. It's just a means of prioritisation so that we can absolutely get this into those communities as a priority. But there are a couple of other aspects to this just transition piece as well. The first of them is community wealth building. I don't know how many of you have read the local power plan in the room, but it was referenced, community wealth building. I don't know that it was referenced in the way that it actually exists in your Oldhams and in your Prestons and in your Lewises. That's something that we also take seriously on the local side. So where possible, when we're working with projects, we don't want to tell you who you have to go and partner with and which suppliers you have to use, but we're trying to build out partner networks and mechanisms that mean if you're a project in Birmingham, your project has a realistic prospect of getting built by a local company in Birmingham. That's the kind of the essence of what we'd like to do with it. The final point is then working in partnership with non-energy focused organisations, which I appreciate will be a lot of the organisations in this room and the 6,000 co-op members that Maeve referenced already. Whether that's as host sites with your local community, if you have a community hub, if you have a building, if you have a bit of land that would look really nice with solar on it, we want to work with you and help you get the community to a point that they can build that project directly. But also when it comes to delivering those share raises to make sure that the community owns the vast majority of that project, if not all of that project, that is critical partnership for us as well. So my emails are a bin fire at this moment in time, but if you're interested in what you're hearing through the sessions today, please do come and talk to me afterwards. We then have innovation. I'm not going to dwell on this. But innovation from the perspective that we want to find new models that work. We're not just going, right, rooftop solar and storage, that's really easy, let's do 1,000 of those. We want to find the new things that work, and we know that in the communities and in the cooperative sector, innovation is a key pillar of what happens there. So we're keen to find new models. We're not locking ourselves down into one way of doing. The final then, the most interesting one, and this is the last point before I close out, is ownership. So we have a priority, we have a presumption to explore community ownership on every investment and every project that we deliver. The reason for that, we've said it out already, you know it in the room, I'm sure, is that community ownership, pound for pound, is a force multiplier of the social and economic value that then comes out of delivering projects, right? It's great if you've got a commercial development and they generate loads of money and you get a community benefit fund, maybe they've created a few jobs, but when a community owns that asset, what then happens in that community, the building of cohesion, the reinvestment in stuff that matters, that's the stuff that matters personally and that matters to us as well. So that's a priority in the work that we're doing. Every scheme, every programme, every fund will have a presumption to explore community ownership within it. The second is then public sector, because actually reducing bills for frontline services we believe is a useful thing, especially when you have schools, colleges, hospitals really up against it, having to lay off staff because their energy bills have gone up 300% in the last couple of years. So where we can, enabling that, and enabling the partnership between the two, right? Communities building with councils, building with schools, colleges, hospitals, blue light services, social housing, pulling that together, again, to maximise the localisation of that value. And then finally, we'll own some stuff. We won't own some stuff as a priority, but where it's catalytic. So if we can help to build something out where we're the owner and give you time to raise the share finance that you want to raise over maybe a couple of offers, a couple of periods, we can steward that project for you to let you sort of buy down over time. So where it's catalytic, GBE will take an ownership stake. There's an awful lot more. There's a veritable butcher's block that sits behind all of these, and you'll hear an awful lot more over the next couple of months about the specifics in terms of funds and things like that we've got coming out. I will share some gossip after the session, but you can't tell anyone else. But just to wrap us, the provocation from the start, GBE will not save us all. We are trying as quickly as we can, and we're confident and we're optimistic about the opportunity in front of us for the local and community-owned energy sector, especially at this kind of political moment, at this moment in the energy transition where it feels like everything's kind of passing us by, profits are up, affordability is way, way down. We are putting in place the architecture, we're putting in place the funds, we're putting in place the support that communities are likely to need, but we can't do it all ourselves. We don't have the resource, and I don't think Treasury would give us the resource to come out into every community and do the engagement that matters locally on local specific projects. We're not going to be able to come out and explain to your community, well, maybe we will, but to be the person that convenes a community to get a project moving. It takes everyone in this room, but in communities organising on the ground across the country. And I say that as someone who organises in a community in the northeast of Scotland. I know this is hard work, but we'll build the architecture, we will make it easy, but it's still going to take an awful lot to get us to that point of 1,000 projects, and then the next 1,000 and the next 1,000. But I would argue that the size of the prize is bigger than it's ever been. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Fraser. That was such a very good, very thorough kind of beginning. I just wanted to start by saying that two of my favourite community energy projects that I personally know about are a disused brewery in Lewis covered in solar panels. Do you guys know about that one? It's a great one. And also in Bristol, they have the UK's biggest wind turbine, which everyone in the community all pitched together to basically build and buy this wind turbine. And now they make money from it because they sell the energy that they don't use back to the grid. So those are some kind of tangible examples that come to mind for me when I listen to this. Matthew, I'm going to start with you. We've spoken a bit about community energy projects that already exist, but how can the wider cooperative community in this room work with the community energy sector to seize this opportunity?
So, bit of an introduction from me about what Community Energy England is, who we are. There's Community Energy England, there's Scotland and Wales. So we have about 350 members right across England who are doing everything from generation, as Fraser talked about, retrofit, energy advice. And really what we're all about is, if you think about, it's been proved in other countries that we've got probably about 1% of our energy system is being driven by communities. In other Western economies, that can be well over 50%. So there's a huge opportunity about how we can do that. And when we think about the natural resources, natural renewable resources that are there, and the wealth and prosperity that Fraser was touching on they can create, that's the real opportunity. So what we're about at Community Energy England is, how do we use that collective power that we've got with our members and practitioners so that we can shape policy and shape the system so it's better set up for community energy to be able to take advantage. Because at the moment we have an energy system, energy policy, energy regulation, the way it's planned, that wasn't geared for doing what we're trying to do now with community energy and with local energy. It wasn't set up to do this. So at Community Energy England, our focus is really on four things about how do we influence, how do we create the right policy and regulatory environment, how do we engage, so how do we get the general public, how do we get people more interested in community energy and aware that it's there as a viable option that's got all of these benefits we've been talking about. How do we enable, so how do we help the community energy schemes that are out there to grow and prosper? And then how do we thrive, how do we make sure that ongoing we've got a future-proofed community energy sector that really does have, whatever way the political winds blow, we've got opportunity. So coming to the point about where do we see working with the cooperative movement and what's that opportunity? I think as Fraser said, this is about GB Energy, what it's doing is necessary, but it's not sufficient. This is all about how do we then build a movement around all of this. And as we start to look at that around the, effectively, the more that we work together, the stronger we are together, the more impact that we can have on shaping some of those things around making the energy system work for community energy and work for these sorts of schemes.
And Matthew, if someone's sitting in the room and they're thinking, we don't know where to start,
Yeah.
you know, how can working with somewhere like Community Energy England help them get off the ground with a project?
Well, we've got, because we're a kind of member and practitioner-led organisation, we've got huge amounts of collective expertise there. So we have all sorts of things, everything from kind of bulletin boards to webinars that we do, to some of that support that's around capacity, capability, etc. Yeah, we've absolutely got that there from, you know, that we can help out with.
Yeah.
A lot of that is that, how do you start? Where do you go?
Okay, that's great to know. And so Nadia and Vicky, I might come to you guys next because you're, that was Community Energy England, and you guys are from London, Nadia, and Grimsby. Vicky, tell us more about kind of the local power plan and how it will benefit your customers and your community specifically. Nadia.
Thanks. Local power plan for us is a massive opportunity. But I think we're waiting to see what the details look like to see how much benefit it will actually deliver. London is a city with hundreds and thousands of buildings that are great for solar panels, for example. London is a city that sadly has some of the highest rates of fuel poverty across the whole of Europe also. So there's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of communities that both need the support but are also ready to deliver a lot of that work. For us, the question for the local power plan is really not so much how many projects can we deliver, but how many communities will be enabled with the capacity to come forward and deliver those projects. So I was really glad to hear what Fraser said in terms of GB Energy is not planning to be, you know, pulling in vans with branding in and delivering projects. It's actually about the fact that a lot of our community energy groups, a lot of the cooperative movement more widely, and I know that everyone sitting in the room today will understand this, has for a long time been very reliant on dedicated, driven volunteers who just do this because they care so much and they know what a difference it will make. But the question is not how many solar panels can we put out there, how many wind turbines can we get out there, and how many homes can we retrofit, but how many people can we enable to be in positions where they're not asked to give their time and give their efforts completely to a point that will just exhaust them? What support mechanisms are in place to help these people get projects off the ground, but also deliver them in a way that's sustainable for them and for their communities? And I think the main thing we'd like to see from the local power plan is actually about building capacity rather than delivering energy or power capacity. So, yeah, I'll hand over to Vicky.
Thank you. There are some other mics if anyone wants. Vicky, tell us about your perspective from Grimsby.
So I would very much echo everything that Nadia said, specifically in Grimsby, where we're at a period where we've got about 1 megawatt of solar across 15 community buildings. So we're cutting their bills, we're cutting their energy emissions, and they wouldn't. It's the hospice, it's the YMCA, it's the engineering training centre, and those organisations would not have got the solar, they wouldn't have had the resource, they had the desire. So we now have 10 firm expressions of interest for new sites. There's a lot of schools in there, there's some community buildings, and we want to develop those. So with our own resource, working in the evening, working partly paid, partly as volunteers.
And how do you get that message out to the schools and to the places that are signing up? How are you spreading that awareness for people who might not know this is an option?
Some of it is spreading by words of mouth among the local community sector, and people are thinking, you've done that community centre, ours looks just similar, we'll get in touch. And some of it, the local council very helpfully, that's why we got a lot of school inquiries, it went out on their newsletter with their stamp. So I think the support that GBE can potentially offer will make the difference between, do we pick 3 or 4 best projects in terms of financial return and say we'll do the bigger, the easier ones, but more support would enable us to look and say, well, the food bank one, it's a little one, it's a difficult roof, it's not so financially viable, but clearly by the nature of that building and organisation, if we can find a way, let's do it. And I think that that is what I hope support could make the difference to do more and to do the more socially impactful but financially less attractive ones.
Yeah. And just for both of you, one more question about, when we're talking about more disadvantaged communities, how can we kind of stop? Obviously, it's great that there's this 1 billion that exists and hopefully will be funneling down, but how can we kind of stop community energy from becoming something that only essentially is benefiting more kind of well-organised or affluent communities?
I think that's a really good question, because I think if we see a process of funding the capital and putting money into just financing projects and delivering projects, I think that does risk kind of reproducing the existing inequalities that we see. People know their communities the best, is what I would say. For example, in South East London, through South East London Community Energy, we have in the past year supported over 5,000 households to with fuel poverty and energy advice. That's saved them collectively over £1 million in just 1 year.
Wow.
But that doesn't look like an online application or a website that tells you what grant funding or what support is available. What it looks like is delivering energy advice in Spanish, in Bengali, in the languages of the communities that we work with, where we have got a deaf client, making sure that the advisor that works with them can support them in whatever needs they have. And more importantly, working with the local trusted community partners that they're already going to, because often people that have problems with energy issues have problems with other areas of their lives that are actually quite interconnected. So I think, especially when we talk about working with the cooperative movement as well, there's so many co-ops that are out there supporting people with housing issues, with health issues. And building the relationships with those trusted support partners is one of the core areas that can make sure deprived communities are reached through this process.
That kind of intersectional approach. Vic, did you want to add to that? No, that's fine. So I think, Scott, I'd love to come to you next. So I'm going round, I'm kind of popping round the semicircle. But it's important to come to you next in the flow of the discussion, I think, because you are at Green City Whole Foods and you've been investing in your own energy for some time now. So you're kind of a case study, really, for everyone in this room. So I was wondering if you could tell us about it, the action you've taken and kind of the lessons that you've learned.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Is that one? Yeah. So 10 years ago, we installed a 10 kilowatt system with solar. Oh, is it?
Try another one.
Hello?
There we go. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry. 10 years ago, we installed a 10 kilowatt array of solar, and at that time, we managed to get some feed-in tariff as well. So that's basically, although the solar panels were more expensive then, the feed-in tariff mitigated that, and now we're making we get £1,500 every year back. And when our energy bills went up again, like after the Ukraine war, that we installed a 20 kilowatt system in our warehouse, and the return on investment was like 3.5, 4 years. So really fantastic. Anything under 10 years in terms of return on investment is a good sign. And we did get assistance from the Green Business Fund from Glasgow City Council, so that was really appreciated. And that's helped us be more resilient. And we've also installed charger points for electric vehicles. We've retrofitted all our lighting to LED, and again got some grant money for that. And that's helped us steer through really tricky times for trade in terms of profitability and employing people. So.
And what made it worthwhile for you commercially? Because if someone's sitting and thinking this is quite a big upfront investment in the sense that, you know, hopefully they'll get some help from the local power plan, but it might not be all of it. What would you say to them in terms of the benefits that it's had for you commercially?
Well, we're fortunate that we own the property, but I would say even if you're in a position where you've got a long-term lease, then the price of electricity is crazy. There's a lot of profiteering going on within the energy companies, and the way to mitigate that is solar. I'm also a member of Spirit of Lanarkshire, which is a wind turbine co-op, part of Energy for All. So and that was I got a dividend from Green City, and then it was like, right, what am I going to do with it? I've spend it on records, what I usually do, but I invested it in there, and every year I get a £400 dividend, and it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. It's really, really worthwhile.
Yeah. Amazing. Thanks, Scott. Well, we'll come back to you maybe to hear a bit more. I'm just going to come to Gareth now, and we will get back to you again, Fraser. So Gareth, just in case anyone isn't aware, maybe can you just explain very briefly kind of how your party works and its relationship? So you're from the Co-operative Party, its relationship with the Labour Party. Not all Labour MPs are cooperative representatives, but a big chunk are. Is that right?
Yeah, so in Parliament we've got 42 Labour and cooperative members of Parliament. We probably have another 100 or two that are members of the party, not formally sitting as co-op, but supportive of what we're doing and working with us on some of these things, including community energy. But at a local government level also, we have over 1,200 councillors. We're represented on the majority of councils across Great Britain. So all of our co-op councillors are also Labour councillors as well. So it does give us a huge opportunity through the local power plan to support communities in delivering community energy. And that was something that was included in the very first announcements going back to 2023 about the £1 billion plan. And actually the councils can act as a catalyst to actually host and facilitate community groups coming together. Now, obviously, we've got examples on the panel and across the country where people have managed to do this. more or less against the grain, but now with GB Energy, with the local power plan, with government support, with funding, and with hopefully a cohort of 1,200 plus co-op councils, we can actually support communities.
Amazing. And so in your view, kind of what are the biggest opportunities for collaboration with local government that, you could tell the room?
Yeah, so, like I say, we can be that local government and local councils can be that facilitating body, bringing people together, bringing communities together, even simple things like finding a room to host an event in, for Community Energy England and others to come and actually present to local communities and say, this would be great in this area, identifying areas of deprivation that would most benefit from having a community energy project in their area, and providing that free room hire, providing stats and data around the local areas. But also we've heard a lot around solar on rooftops and schools and so on. So obviously local authorities would for most areas would have a huge amount of public buildings that could be offered up for community energy projects. And as I say in Grimsby, lots of schools are saying, and I'm a school governor myself, every penny counts. So if you can get solar on the panels there, money going back into the community through the schools and so on, there is so much opportunity to work with local authorities. And I think historically, perhaps local authorities haven't been there. In terms of supporting community energy, and as I say, the groups on this panel and elsewhere, it's incredible that they've managed to get this far. Going against the grain over the last 10 or 15 years. Now we've got all that backing for government, public policy, ministers, and so on. That actually this stuff, we can take these examples, we can show them to other areas, and we can replicate them. And as Matthew says, huge number of case studies and toolkits on that they have available, and that's what we're looking to do through the Cooperative Party, bringing along our, as I say, 1,200 plus councils to actually deliver this in communities. Because that's what cooperative councils are about, is working with the community rather than doing it to the community.
Yeah, on the ground. Thank you. And Fraser, I'm going to come back to you, because it sounds like from what everyone's saying in the panel, there's a lot of support, there's a lot of enabling, kind of all these words. It sounds great, but what a lot of people are saying is kind of like, where's the money? Or when is the money? How are they going to get access to the money? So, what's the single kind of biggest obstacle for you in government in terms of hitting the 2030 vision?
Well, first, I'm not in government.
Not personally.
And so extrapolate what you think my biggest hurdle is at this moment in time. But in terms of achieving that timeline, so we know that there's lots of policy and regulatory stuff that sits around all of this, right? There's challenges with the grid, there's challenges with planning, there's challenges politically with councils changing colours and all that stuff as well. Our view internally, at least, is playing the hand that we're dealt. So for us, we're confident that we can get the money out the door to the people and to the organisations that need it and who are best placed, as Nadia says, who know their areas, who are best placed to bring communities together and build the projects that ultimately matter. But actually, it's a much bigger opportunity than that, right? There are great organisations that already exist in these areas, albeit without the appropriate support, and as Gareth says, against the grain, in spite of a challenging environment. So for us, I think the big challenge is enabling those organisations. That's probably the easier bit, and it's not easy. We're well aware it's not easy, but it's getting into those new and different communities who haven't taken the first steps yet. So this speaks partly to the capacity and capability programme, which has come up a few times. We're in the stage of kind of early design, ready to come out and work with the sector to shape exactly what the best version of it looks like. But it takes, in our minds at least, it takes two strands. The first is awareness of the opportunity, right? If you're someone, like Thornton Park in Forfar, right, the council estate that I grew up on, you're not thinking about energy other than, do I have money for my bill? You're not necessarily thinking, can I then get involved in a community energy project or invest in a local, I'm sure people find this all the time. So there's partly an awareness piece, which starts with working with the existing organisations who do this in their communities, who are trusted already in practice. But raising awareness so that communities can take the first step, so that new and different communities can come forward and benefit. And that's solar in cities, but it's also wind turbines in small new towns in Scotland as well, who maybe have a bit of land that could take a wind turbine. It's shared ownership as well. In Scotland, Slightly different scenario, although I dare say you'll see it now that the planning restrictions have been lifted around wind in England. You'll see more wind farms getting built. In Scotland, you watch wind farms being built all the time, and you look at your electricity meter and you think, what the
Yeah,
fuck is
it's
going
not
on here?
affecting it.
Can we have an ownership stake
Yeah.
in those as well as building our own projects? That's the other route in.
Okay.
But it starts with awareness of the opportunity and providing that direct support with trusted partners on
Yeah.
the ground who can realise the opportunity.
Thank you. That's actually very clear. So I'm just going to say I'm going to come to you guys in just a couple of minutes, really. So think of your questions. We've got a roving mic, and we'll come round to you if you want to share a reflection or a question. I'll come to you in just a few minutes. Just before I do, I just wanted to go back, especially to the people kind of on the ground, the people in the specific communities, but Matthew, also to you, just to talk about whether you have any specific obstacles you can kind of name that you managed to get through, any hurdles that you've overcome, which could be useful for other people before they begin their own journey.
Where do I start? Okay. I think if you're a cooperative and you're looking at your energy bill and you're thinking, how on earth are we going to pay this? The first thing I would think about is, how do I reduce the amount of energy that I use? And then second thing I would think about is, how do I get cheaper energy? Now those can be very technical and complex areas. So just have a quick Google and see, is there anyone who's an expert on this in your area? i.e., is there a community energy group already in your area? Can I ask a quick question to everyone here? Who has ever spoken to someone from a community energy group before? Brilliant. We are in a room of movers and innovators. So what you've probably found is people are very happy to have a chat, very happy to give their time to figure out how can we help support this. So I would say there's lots of support networks out there. The ones that are most useful are when people talk to each other. So Community Energy England has Lumio, which is an online platform. We just drop our questions in there, no matter how random they are, and somewhere in the country, someone will pop up with an answer about how they've done it. There's also the Energy Learning Network, which offers one-to-one kind of peer mentoring. I've mentored people through that network. Lots of other groups have had mentoring through that network as well. But I would say the main thing, and Fraser touched on this earlier, is actually outside of this space, very few people have heard of the concept of community energy at all. And I think people forget how connected energy is to every other part of our lives. Especially since COVID, we've seen many more families, many more individuals fall into fuel poverty. We've seen many organizations struggling to pay their energy bills, especially small non-profits and cooperatives. And the question here is not so much how do we solve the energy crisis or the energy issue. The question is, how do we help people and organizations that are already doing good work, that are already dealing with issues at the level where they're already at? So I think for me that is the answer, that actually we need to stop talking to each other within the energy sector, and we need to start spreading and talking to other sectors. One of my main bugbears recently has been dealing with local authorities that are understaffed, that have a lack of knowledge, that have a lack of understanding about how energy projects work. But what I'm realizing is actually the way to crack this, and the local authorities that have cracked this have had messages from leadership higher up saying, do you know what? Fuel poverty is actually a priority for us. Climate change is actually a priority for us. Then suddenly, the legal team starts to understand what's happening. The people that are responsible for procurement start to understand what's happening, start caring about social impact when they procure. and everything kind of falls into place.
Thank you, Nadia. Vicky, any obstacles or hurdles you'd like to share from Grimsby?
I completely agree with your experience and points made. We have managed to increase our membership and get younger ones and get some young people on our board. And even when the Wi-Fi went down and the members who were online at the AGM were suddenly not there, we remained co-op. Could have been an absolute disaster. But we've done this by doing student placements. We're fortunate now to have an office. We're in 2-3 days a week, the team together. And number 25 will be taking his or her seat very soon. So we've worked with the local sixth form, both from their business T-level course and from the Eco Club, via one of our directors, who's a teacher at the college. We also work with the Tech Partnership, and we've had some T-level students there, and also some university-level business and accounting. So we've had a range. Some of them take a great deal of work, and some of them pick it up, and our social media posts are full. They're all scheduled. The bookkeeping's done. A blog has been written for the website, and some pictures taken, and some forms from, some data has been entered.
So integrating young people's really helped in your community.
Which frees up the other members of the team to do more advanced work, because we've got students doing the basics. So it's been really positive for us. It isn't easy to sit and supervise somebody and put the hours in until they can work independently. But when they do, it's an absolute joy. And having a couple of members on the board who are former students, and seeing that, our AGM remained co-op even when the Wi-Fi went down, because we had 4 or 5 students who are now members. So just wanted to tell people about that.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm going to come to you guys now, and maybe everyone, you can decide if you would like to address your question to someone in particular, or we can choose depending on maybe who's kind of best equipped. But who has a question? Going to encourage people to be brave. Thank you. Great, yeah. Just in the middle.
Hi, yeah, I'd like to mention, I don't know, something might be a dirty word in community energy, that's data centres. There's a massive growth in that industry. There's large amounts of investment pouring into that sector. Data centres are actually really efficient converters of electrical energy into heat. And I'm just wondering if there's a place in your vision for small, community-based data centres to be part of your model, so they could be an anchor customer, making sure that they're consuming energy 24/7, but they're also potentially supplying heat into a local community heat network or something like that. I just wonder if it's something that people are considering.
It's a great question. Matthew, do you have a view on that, or should we go to Fraser?
It's probably more for Fraser, but what I would say, agree, the heat is something that's going to be a really important part of the transition, and communities have a huge role to play in heat, whether that's through retrofit advice or these sorts of things that you talk about, heat networks and so on, big opportunity.
Definitely aware of it. It's been something that's been mooted around the UK for a good while, not just data centres, but other sort of similar profiled industrial users. And I think I don't think it's a bad idea by any stretch. The challenge is we haven't demonstrated it yet in the UK. So where we said earlier in the presentation, where there's an innovation role, then it's absolutely something that could be interesting, provided there's community ownership and provided it serves households directly and it meets all the other objectives. One of the longer term plays that we want to make is we start with the stuff that we know that works just now, that communities are coming to us, that Grimsby's are coming to us with and saying, look, we've got projects, can you please fucking hurry up? But the moving forward into systems that join up those assets locally. So exactly that kind of thing, where you have a big centre that can channel heat into a local community, but also where you have community-owned generation supplying directly to homes and to schools, and providing benefits to the network as well. All of this is part of the longer term vision. That was an extremely waffly way of saying yes, absolutely. It's a bit beyond our reach at this moment, but we'd be interested.
Nadia?
As a community energy practitioner, and on behalf of all the community energy groups in London, we would love to work with data centers. We would love to. That reason is because data centers and any high energy user provides a really sustainable site for us to work with, financially very reliable. The income from that would free up a lot of capacity to be delivered back into the projects that aren't financially lucrative but are massively socially impactful, right? The problem that we have at the moment is community energy isn't factored into local power planning, local energy planning, as much as I would like it to be. Data centers and heat recovery from data centers, we have seen some pilot projects. We have seen Transport for London working on waste heat recovery from the tube stations. Brilliant idea, fantastic. Where are communities in those projects? They're just sidelined, they're not involved. The reason is the tendering processes, the procurement processes are set up for businesses. They're not set up for community organizations or for community groups. So my ask here is that any local authorities, any energy planning teams actually do factor in that community energy groups and communities have a core role to play in projects like these that are large-scale projects, that are sustainable projects for communities. But that needs to happen in the early stages of the planning. It needs to be embedded in local authority delivery and procurement processes especially. You know, we've missed out on loads of tender prospects for local authorities because they just don't factor in social impact when it comes to evaluating tenders. All they factor in is cost, how much insurance have you got, and what do the warranties look like?
So it's a wider question really across councils and across the UK, kind of call to action on that. Thanks, Nadia. Does anyone else have a question? Yeah, just at the back here. Yeah. Sorry, in the middle.
Hi, my name's Saskia. I'm organising a talk for Community Energy Go, which is a support programme for newly forming community energy groups as part of Community Energy Fortnight. So first of all, question to everyone in the room who isn't involved in community energy, please come and find me because I want to know what would be the useful questions, say after a session like this, that you've got that we should be addressing. But my question to the panel is absolutely, we need to be raising awareness. What's the thing that you think we could be doing to help reach out beyond our green bubble?
Who would like to go for that one? Yeah, Gareth?
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. Just on the very last point around procurement, because Fraser mentioned around community wealth building, the local power plan, and that's exactly what we need to start doing, that there is some point scoring to ensure that local energy and community energy is prioritised. But it follows on into that point as well, and if you follow any of the Cooperative Party social media channels, you'll see that we do an awful lot of visits and we go and showcase cooperatives, we go and showcase community centres, community projects and community energy projects, fan-owned football and so on. And I think that is one of the main points. I think we're all attuned to the fact that we're in a room of a lot of people who very much understand this and very much support this, but out there in the public, we've managed to get government's priority on this, but the public wider probably aren't quite aware of it, and we need to do as much as we can. So it is a huge publicity exercise that we're going to have to do, very much GB Energy's priority, but all of us will all have to play our part. And I think social media is the way forward, and as well as traditional media, but going out and showcasing, visiting all these examples, doing tours, doing videos, and explaining the benefit to people, whatever their priority is. So, whether their priority is to tackle climate change, but for some people that might not be the priority, but the priority might be to save money or it might be to get money into their communities. So it is a huge publicity exercise that we're all going to have to contribute to. But I think we've shown some good examples of that in the visits we've done. And if there is anyone else that would like the Cooperative Party to come and visit and do a quick video and put that out on the social media, we'd be very happy to.
Yes, Matthew.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's there's a few things that we've been trying to do at Community Energy England around this. So along with a number of partners, we've got the Up the Energy campaign, which some of you might have seen that's out at the moment. That is about a campaign, first of all, that was looking at some of the things that need to change in the system. But we're about to move into the second stage of that, which is a lot more about activation. So touring around different towns, different villages around England, showing some of the opportunities that are there. So that's one thing. Up the Energy, go and have a look at that. We've done some work around seeing is believing, because you can't beat that bit, as Gareth was saying, about showcasing. So again, if you have a look on the website, we did a particular piece of work in the northeast of England where we'd seen something of a cold spot for community energy. There was lots of work that was done there around so that local authorities and community groups can see what's happening. And I guess the last point is we're, again, trying to think about where are some of those communities that exist that might not have heard of community energy. So things like music venues is a really interesting one. Where do people come together who might be interested in this? Music venues, sport venues, faith groups. They're all places where we're having to think differently about what does community look like and who might be interested in getting involved in the movement.
Thank you.
I guess my perspective is slightly different. I do very much agree that we need to talk about community energy more. We need to raise awareness through word of mouth, through presentations, etc., etc. But I think perhaps in London we're at a little bit of a different position, because we've had a lot of support from the Mayor of London on community energy. The London Community Energy Fund is, they've run 7 or 8 rounds. So there has been clear demonstration from the Mayor of London that this is something that he supports. And that has unlocked a lot of attention from local authorities. Something that he has set up also is the Community Energy Task Force, which is a group of community energy practitioners that are coming together to think about, okay, how do we go from pilot projects and small groups to scaling this across the whole of London? And at Community Energy London, we've got a vision of 1,000 projects by 2030 just in London. And we're on our way there. The most recent activity that we've been doing is running a series of workshops working with private sector organizations or businesses, public sector organizations, the finance sector, and local government. And at each of those workshops, we've sat down with key stakeholders within those sectors and said, here's what community energy is. Why aren't you doing it yet? And they've come back with some really interesting answers. We'll be publishing the report from that very soon, so do look out for that. But I think for me, it's actually, we are doing the grassroots approach. What we need support with from outside the sector is the top-down approach a little bit more.
Yeah, top down and bottom up.
Exactly.
All together. I think we've got time for just one last question. Yeah, just in the corner.
Give me a sec. I'm facing this way because it's a question for the room. Has anyone seen Sean Fensom? If you're here, make yourself known. If not, I'll be the bearer of the good news, which is on data centers, the thing that you described exists. It's in Blackpool. It's a community-owned, the local authority, the NHS locally, and a couple of other organisations clubbed together. One of the transatlantic cables lands in Dublin and then goes to Blackpool. They own the infrastructure from the pipes up to the data centre, up to what's required for those organisations to run their own networks. But they also have heat recovery from the data center that heats the local swimming pool. So it's at least one that definitely exists today in the world of co-ops that we can scale up. They've got 3 other local authority, led, I suppose, sites in the UK. I don't know if all of those have heat recovery built in, but there's definitely one. So my encouragement would be that for this new emerging, we know it's possible, we've seen it done, maybe can we get the support there a bit sooner this time than 20 years of community energy showing that this is possible, and then, we really make efforts to make it easier, because it is still far too hard. Let's help the next heat recovery system, get some support much sooner than we've had to wait with community energy.
Thank you very much. Very useful to know.
Sorry, just off
Last
the
reflection.
Yeah, I thought that was a really exciting fact there. And I think that just brings me to my final point, really, is community energy innovators have been innovating. They've been making projects happen. They've been doing the pilot work for a long time. You said 20 years of community energy to bring this project to fruition. If we're going to scale, it's not necessarily just funding the projects to go forward, but funding all of that messy, figuring it out work that needs to happen to make sure that we are enabling more communities to do the innovating, to do the piloting, to do the how do we actually do this. And then that will be what catalyzes the sector to grow rather than just funding the existing projects, funding the existing models.
Yeah.
So I think my key takeaway here is, although the innovation has been happening for a long time, we've all said it's been slower than we would like. So what needs to happen is funding those risky parts, funding the figuring it out bits, funding the let's get started bits.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nadia.
May I add some examples of the kind of things that are to be funded, or it would be good.
Yeah.
They're not hard outputs in kilowatt hours or number of solar panels, tons of CO2, but the people engaged is really important. So I'm doing an assembly online for Lincolnshire schools on Monday morning. That's, you know, not something that you'd think you would fund. Apparently there were 5,000 school children on the same event last year.
Wow.
So, and I'm going to talk about co-ops and community energy and what we do. They've also got somebody talking about nuclear fusion and somebody talking about offshore wind, so it'll be an interesting one. And then there's attending your local Chamber of Commerce, and, you know, they're always looking for speakers for events. That's other opportunities. And that networking, getting out there and going on the stage and putting your slides up at any event you can.
Yeah.
You know, you do it for years and years and years, and it's exhausting. But when you count it up, you've talked to thousands of people, and they knew that this sector and this concept and way of doing things exists where they may have not have heard it before. So it's a bit hard to quantify, and you can't ever point at a benefit and say, we did that talk and this happened.
Yeah.
But you know the general temperature
Yeah,
of
it's a ripple
awareness
effect,
is creeping
isn't it?
up.
Yeah. And Fraser, can you just remind us, there's a breakout session, I believe, later where people are going to be speaking about this, and you can tell them more?
Yes.
Yes?
There will be a breakout session later where
Yeah.
people will be.
Oh, I thought you knew the details. I think it's at 3:15, but I was going to let you say that. It's at 3:15. So if you want to know more, you can go there. The panel, I'm sure, are all available to speak to you afterwards. And please give them a massive round of applause.